Believer, Tommy Prophet. We mostly hung out in my bed, but sometimes we would snuggle up on the love seat in my morning room on those days when the sun shone through the bay window and my son was still asleep. When he entered, we were displaced to the family room sectional and would curl up in the corner of the couch. My brother introduced you to me. He revered you, understandably so, because my brother appreciates revolutionaries, a title well-deserved. When I was in my 20s, you were in your 70s, but you left this world when I was 29. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I didn't connect with you until I was in my 50s, when my brother introduced you to me, heralding your magnum opus, the structure of scientific revolutions. I like to think our connection validated Section 10, revolutions as changes of worldview. You were a bit dodgy in this section, playing the what-if game, couching your beliefs to not go too far out of bounds. You knew your work would already put you under the microscope, which is often the case with revolutionaries. You hardly wanted to give the scientific community more ammo. You were explaining how a change in perception changes a world. One example you offered of parallel worlds was the world before Copernicus and the world after. That's rather relatable, not too far out of bounds. Yet I read between the lines and extended your analogy to the worlds you and I lived. In my house, you in the death realm, a ghost, me in the world we call living. Parallel worlds, for now. And here we were, in my bed, on my love seat, and in the cozy corner of my couch, living in parallel worlds, connecting. And I was a Kim before you and a Kim after you. You put words in your scientific language that I could translate to my psychology language. You were crossing some time barrier, a space barrier, just like you nudged at in Chapter 10 of your book. A conservative scientific ally would say your nod to simultaneous realities living side by side on the same planet was speaking in metaphor. What you didn't know before you left was sci-fi would project this parallel world, a multiverse into mainstream, allowing the collective reality to gently expand to your prescient Section 10. If only you could have lived in body to see the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It won 7 Oscars in 2023. Now I call that mainstream, and the exemplification of your Section 10. The word revolution dates back to the 13th century, to revolve, specifically related to celestial bodies rotating around the Earth. At the time, the pre-Copernicus world, Earth was believed to be the center of celestial bodies, and all galactic bodies rotated around us. It's no surprise in the post-Copernicus world, revolution took on new meaning, a great change in affairs, when everything we know is overthrown, thrown into crisis, a disruption in continuity. The domain changes and new languages are sought. It is progress away from what we previously believed to be true, a revolution of the word revolution. You were a seeker of truth and rallied against the Western construct that a universal truth could be discovered, and there was only one complete accounting to this truth. You conveyed your frustration when you asked the question, does it really help? Does arguing against one another get us closer to understanding? I'm not fond of revolutions, or crisis, or overthrowing, or arguments, but I'm more yin to your yang. You were prepared to take the institution on and spent the remainder of your life trying to explain the terms and theories elucidated in your work. You were both accused of denying the rationality of science and heralded as a prophet of new relativism. I'm more of a revelation person, also dating back to the 13th century. It stems from the Latin word revelare, to unveil, uncover, lay bare. I'm sure you see why I prefer this to revolution. It's much more alluring, seductive. It is also the side of an opening for a window or doorway. I like oblique methods. It reduces defenses when one doesn't come at something directly. It is my preference, although admittedly I do have more direct methods, if needed. I smiled when I discovered you felt like you'd lost control of the term paradigm. Although you were not the creator of the word, you were certainly the popularizer of it. Prior to your work, the word was close to non-existent. Then there was the world after Kuhn, the world when paradigm went off the charts in use. I translated your use of paradigm shifts as how parallel worlds existed, that our perception of a reality is what allows us to operate in a multiverse. This translation helped put words to how I experienced the various worlds I encountered in my private practice, as well as every other relationship I encountered. I felt a kinship to you as you shared your meandering experience, allowing to arrive to your collection of essays, what then became your magnum opus. When you were a graduate student in theoretical physics, you coincidentally came upon information during your study that undermined the basic premise about the nature of science. So rocked by this finding, you pivoted. You needed a deeper dive into the core tenets that were the bedrock of the behemoth scientific structures your future would be based upon. You were within the finish line of your degree, backed up and changed your study to the history of science. And the seed was planted. As the structure of what you perceived to be firmly constructed began to disintegrate, the deeper you dove. I had a similar experience in my grad school program when I dove into the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders used for the mental health system. These were a collection of social constructs of the definition of normal and abnormal. I could not stop my mind from questioning, what else could this be? As I read through a collection of symptoms clustered into a diagnosis, it didn't feel right to me any more than it felt right to you when you dove deeper into the core tenets of science. Our objectives align, although yours are more yang, urging changes to perception and re-evaluating what was known to form a new paradigm. That urgency is what I attribute to a revolutionary mindset. I, however, wished for changes to perception and reevaluate what could be known from a new paradigm. It's interesting to me, as I'm sure you would agree, that a single word could make a world of difference. Your urging, my wishing. You used autobiographical fragments to illuminate that urgency. I too used autobiographical fragments to illuminate my wish. Yours was through thought, arguments, and scholarship. Mine through heart, connection, and intimacy. These approaches reflected the worlds in which we resided. We aligned on gameplay with established rules as a method to discover worlds outside the collectively agreed upon world. The clues lay within the anomalies, the gap between the theory of gameplay as set out in the rules and the experience of gameplay. The theory will prove to feel artificial if the experience does not support the expected outcome. And yet, as you discovered in science, these anomalies become the very thing ignored, denied, and pushed aside so we can feel safely protected by the rules of play. We stay within the confines of the theory, perfecting, linking, and tossing out what does not fit with the rule book. I'm sure it doesn't surprise you. The world is screaming this reality is an illusion, because we seem to have lost the point of the game, to discover these anomalies as clues to an expanded perception on the horizon. But in my field, we diagnose these anomalies because we are holding up an arc of normalcy, the average bell-shaped curve. When the scientific community discovered your description of their work as puzzle solving, like crossword puzzles and Sudoku, pleasant ways to keep busy, but staying within the bounds of the rules, they were pretty shocked, and I imagine offended. You pointed out that normal science was not interested in novelty or the anomalies that point to novelty which emerges from confronting held perceptions. Of course, your confrontation of this view on normal science left the impression you didn't value it, which of course you did. Such is the nature of revolutions. So many arguments and misunderstandings. You acknowledged the heroic efforts of Newton, yet your focus was, on a much smaller scale, anomalies. What I'd say are the margins, the outliers in data that get dismissed. Normal science wants to maintain the status quo and clear it from those anomalies, just as our society wants to maintain their status quo and clear anxiety and depression with pharmaceuticals and therapies. I think of Rachel Maines, who had a particular interest in ancient science and technology, receiving her PhD in applied history and social science from Carnegie Mellon University. She was also controversial. I think you would have liked her. She theorized the inventor of the first vibrator, Joseph Mortimer Granville, a 19th century English physician, was used as a treatment for hysteria. This was the Victorian era, and a necessity to conceal anomalies and socially camouflaging technology for women. Hysteria was the first and only mental health diagnosis attributed to women. It was a time of great change, the Industrial Revolution. Women were showing up with severe symptoms, what I would consider anomaly, indicating a paradigm shift, the world before machines and the world after. Behavior that by today's standards would be normal were considered frenzied, frantic, or out of control. This is when hysterectomies were used as a treatment to the symptoms. And what Rachel posited, orgasms did as well, a less invasive way of treating. Like you, I appreciate the mental health field's approach to symptoms by staying within the confines of a collective perspective of normalcy. I truly believe many benefits arise from these therapies. I've been participating in these modalities. Yet, like you, I can't help but wonder, are these growing anomalies, called a mental health diagnosis, indicators of a paradigm shift? And like you, I can't help but ask, is it really helping? Does our normal worldview get us closer to understanding? I, like you, couch my beliefs, literally, not figuratively, as clients or friends or lovers or children nestle on my sofa, and in this place, we have discovered how liberating it is to go far out of bounds. I highly recommend it.